Senators in Washington are drafting new legislation to permanently prevent federal government shutdowns. This bipartisan effort seeks to automate funding mechanisms that keep agencies operational during budget stalemates. By removing the threat of gridlock, lawmakers hope to ensure federal employees receive paychecks without interruption. This change would shift how Congress handles annual appropriations moving forward. The proposal signals a major change in how the legislative branch manages national fiscal stability. The federal government has reached a settlement to drop outstanding tax claims against President Trump. This resolution ends long-standing litigation between the president and the IRS regarding his personal financial filings. By closing these cases, the administration effectively clears the president of specific tax liabilities that had been under scrutiny. This decision highlights the intersection of personal financial interests and executive authority. The settlement brings an end to a high-profile legal battle between the IRS and the commander-in-chief. Legal scholars are raising alarms over the Trump administration's newly created Anti-Weaponization Fund. Critics argue the fund lacks clear oversight and deviates from established budgetary protocols for federal agencies. The initiative is designed to combat what the president calls the weaponization of government against his administration. Legal experts warn this could set a dangerous precedent for how federal money is redirected without traditional congressional approval. The establishment of this fund remains a point of significant constitutional debate. A new agreement between the Trump administration and tax authorities has officially concluded the president's ongoing IRS audits. This deal effectively terminates investigations into the president's personal business dealings and financial history. By resolving these audits, the administration removes potential legal hurdles that have persisted for years. Critics point to this as a conflict of interest, while supporters see it as a final resolution of tax disputes. The closure of these files marks a significant shift in the president's personal legal landscape. The Brennan Center for Justice has released a report highlighting what they call systemic corruption within the current federal government. The report details instances where administrative decisions appear to prioritize political allies over public interest. These findings suggest a degradation of ethics standards in Washington that could erode public trust. Analysts argue this behavior undermines the foundational principles of impartial governance. The organization is now calling for immediate transparency reforms to address these ethical lapses. A daughter-in-law of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has resigned from 2 federal positions, citing disagreements over potential war with Iran. The official stated she could no longer support an administration whose foreign policy she finds morally objectionable. This high-profile departure highlights internal dissent regarding the current administration's military posture in the Middle East. Her resignation leaves 2 vacancies that the administration must now move to fill. The move underscores the growing friction between personal ethics and government service. North Carolina voters will head to the polls in 2026 to decide on a constitutional amendment limiting property tax hikes. Lawmakers placed the measure on the ballot to address concerns over rising housing costs and affordability across the state. If passed, the amendment would place a permanent ceiling on how much local governments can increase property tax rates. This change would significantly alter the revenue-gathering capacity of municipal and county governments. The outcome will have a lasting impact on homeowners and local school funding. Gubernatorial candidates in Wisconsin are outlining competing plans to address the state's growing childcare crisis. The proposals range from increased tax credits for working parents to direct state subsidies for childcare providers. With many facilities closing due to staffing shortages, the issue has become a top priority for families statewide. Voters will use these plans to determine which candidate offers the most sustainable economic path forward. The next governor will inherit a sector that is critical to the state's workforce participation. A grassroots organization in Michigan is confident they have secured enough signatures to put a campaign finance reform proposal on the ballot. The Money Out of Politics initiative seeks to limit the influence of dark money and large corporate donations in state elections. Proponents argue that current laws allow special interests to dictate policy at the expense of average citizens. If the initiative qualifies, voters will decide the future of political spending in Michigan. This effort represents a significant push for transparency in the state's electoral process. The American Civil Liberties Union is sounding the alarm over the Trump administration's recent rhetoric and actions targeting the Southern Poverty Law Center. Legal advocates warn that delegitimizing civil rights organizations threatens the democratic process and freedom of association. The administration has accused the group of bias, leading to calls for investigations into the organization's tax-exempt status. This conflict raises concerns about the use of government power to retaliate against political watchdogs. The standoff remains a critical test for the protection of non-governmental advocacy groups. The White House is pivoting its policy focus following a series of recent legislative developments in Washington. Administration officials are now prioritizing specific executive actions designed to streamline federal operations and address economic concerns. These updates come as the president attempts to solidify his agenda before the next election cycle. The changes will impact how various agencies interact with the public and manage resources. Observers are closely monitoring these shifts to gauge the administration's long-term legislative strategy. The Cato Institute is criticizing the Trump administration's new Anti-Weaponization fund, labeling it a taxpayer-funded slush fund. The organization argues that the fund lacks the necessary legislative oversight to prevent the misuse of federal dollars. By allowing the executive branch to reallocate funds, the policy bypasses the standard check of congressional approval. This controversy highlights the ongoing tension between executive power and fiscal responsibility. The future of the fund is now being challenged by transparency advocates. Students from Michigan State University recently spent a full day at the state capitol to learn about the legislative process. The visit allowed them to observe committee hearings and interact with lawmakers currently debating state budget priorities. This hands-on experience provided insight into how policy is crafted and how lobbying groups influence decision-making. Participants hope the visit will encourage more civic engagement among the younger generation. The event highlights the importance of connecting academic study with real-world governance. Representative Blazejewski is responding to backlash regarding his proposed legislation to restructure the Inspector General's office. Critics suggest the plan would weaken the independent watchdog by giving political appointees more oversight. Blazejewski maintains the proposal is intended to increase efficiency and accountability within the department. The debate has sparked a wider conversation about how to best balance executive control with the need for independent oversight. Lawmakers remain divided on whether this reform helps or harms the government's integrity. The National Endowment for Democracy continues its mission to support democratic movements and civil society groups around the world. Based in Washington, the organization provides grants and resources to activists working in restrictive political environments. Their work is considered vital to fostering stability and human rights in emerging nations. By funding these local initiatives, the group aims to promote long-term democratic values internationally. The organization remains a key pillar of American foreign policy and soft power. Maryland officials are facing questions after spending $180,000 to host VIPs at the Preakness horse race. The guest list included executives from Churchill Downs, raising concerns about the use of taxpayer funds for private entertainment. Critics argue that public money should be directed toward essential services rather than hospitality for wealthy stakeholders. The state maintains that the spending was a necessary investment to promote tourism and economic ties. This incident has reignited the debate over fiscal accountability in Maryland's state government. In a significant expansion of a recent lawsuit settlement, the U.S. government has agreed to drop all pending tax claims against President Trump. This move effectively resolves the remaining financial disputes between the president and the IRS. The decision follows months of negotiation regarding the president's personal and business tax filings. By dropping these claims, the government avoids further litigation that could have lasted throughout the presidential term. The resolution brings a definitive end to a major chapter of the president's personal legal history. The Trump administration's new Anti-Weaponization fund has become the center of a growing political scandal. Critics claim the fund is being used to bypass congressional budget authority to reward political allies and punish opponents. The lack of clear guidelines for how the money is spent has led to calls for a formal investigation. Supporters argue the fund is necessary to stop the abuse of government power by entrenched bureaucrats. The controversy continues to intensify as more details about the fund's management emerge. Candidate David Jolly is proposing the creation of a dedicated Office of Civil Rights within the Florida governor's office. If elected, he plans to use the office to investigate discrimination and protect the rights of all state residents. Jolly argues that existing agencies have failed to adequately address civil rights violations across the state. The proposal is a central plank of his campaign platform, aimed at appealing to voters concerned about equality. The move signals a major shift in how the state would handle civil rights enforcement. Senator Marco Rubio is calling out the Cuban government, stating they are actively standing in the way of a better future for their citizens. During a recent address, Rubio highlighted the country's economic stagnation and lack of political freedom as primary obstacles to progress. He urged the international community to support the Cuban people in their quest for democratic change. The senator's comments reflect a long-standing U.S. policy position aimed at pressuring the regime in Havana. This message serves as a reminder of the ongoing strained relations between the two nations.